Hey, hello everybody. This is Lieutenant Michael Noyce Merino. I'm here with Staff Sergeant Carlos Monroy and Sergeant Martin Winfield, and we're going to bring you a little conversation about a resilience skill. This one is going to be put it in perspective. We think this might be a good one for all of you. Just a shout out to all my old people in the 631st and my young people out there. I miss all you guys and gals, and hope to work with you again in the future. But join us and let's talk about some resilience stuff. And let's stay healthy and safe and resilient during this difficult time. Thanks a bunch. Let's get into it.
All right, I got to do the screen share real quick. All right, here we are back again for number 2. All right, we're going to be doing Put It in Perspective, or Piip is like what most of us call it. Again, Sergeant Winfield's here, Lieutenant Noyce Marino's here. We couldn't get Sergeant Melgren this time, but we'll make sure to get him next time. Started out that it is an MRT skill. It's the 3rd MRT skill, I believe. So we're going to go forth. But to put it in perspective, and bottom line up front is that it helps build optimism. You know, you're going to be a happier person if you can identify the fact that you're catastrophizing. Like that's pretty upfront. It's going to lower your anxiety. You know, when you can identify that you're catastrophizing or that you're really, you know, that you need to put it in perspective, you're going to be able to deal with situations a little bit better.
All right, so Sergeant Monroy already brought up the word, but we'll get a quick definition of what catastrophizing actually is. Basically, and we'll get there's 3 main types that we'll get into on the next slide here. But it's basically when you're sitting there stuck in your head thinking about how bad the situation is and you can't seem to pull yourself out of how bad it is, possibly even making it worse in your own head. But the key points to pull away from it is that you're wasting a lot of critical energy, and it's just keeping you from being purposeful in getting done what needs to get done. When we were chatting earlier, sorry, LT, I'm going to steal it from you, but the idea of you're in a snowbank, and instead of getting out and trying to dig yourself out, you're just sitting there hammering on the gas, moving absolutely nowhere, and probably burning out your tires.
All right. There's 3 types of catastrophizing. I'm sure that there's actually more, but these are the 3 types that we highlight. It's downward spiral, which is just like it sounds. You know, I lost my job, so my wife's going to leave me, and my kids are going to hate me, and my truck's going to break down, and you keep just going down and down and down into a darker hole until essentially you just keep going until there's nowhere to go, until you hit rock bottom. And then scattershot.
So scattershot is kind of the very definition of just breaking your focus on what needs to be done. So like the radiator goes out on your truck, and then your next thought is, how am I going to get my groceries now? And then going from there, what are my parents going to think? What's happening in Africa right now? Why is the sky turning gray? Is it going to rain soon? Oh my gosh, is that a new crack in my pavement? Just things like that. Just thoughts that don't connect, that make no sense to one another. They might sound related, but they're actually just breaking your focus from what you need to do.
It's a great example, Martin. That cracked me up. Very, very effective example of scattershot there. So I'll talk about circling. And circling is like you're on a short loop, right? So you've got a quick playback loop. You say one thing bad. Oh my God, I've been notified that my ADOS orders are going to end. And then the next thing, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. We're going to lose the mortgage. And then very quickly, I come back to the first thing, like, oh my God, I can't believe my ADOS orders are ending. How am I going to pay my bills? And just keep going around and around in a circle. I don't know if you've ever seen sheep mill around in a circle when they're being attacked by a dog or a coyote or something, but they just mill around in a giant circle, around and around, till the dog hamstrings every single one of them. And that's what I think of when I think of circling.
Yeah, I really do like that example. We've used that example before in one of the classes that you taught. And the milling sheep it's a good one.
Pretty good.
for catastrophizing, I mean, obviously it creates high levels of anxiety, because if you're going through and you're having all of these issues, you're going to keep getting yourself ramped up and keep, whether you're scattershot, whether you're downward spiral, whether you're circling, you're going to keep having these same, your anxiety is just going to keep rising. You know, you need to put it in perspective, or you need to take a step back even. It decreases focus, because, I mean, if you're just focusing on these issues getting worse and worse and worse, then you're not going to be focusing on how to accomplish the mission, whatever is next. What's your 15-meter target? How are you going to get this done if the only thing you can focus on is your downward spiral of how terrible everything is getting, or you keep circling over and over and over again? All right, moving on to the next slide. If you want to take one of you guys.
I got this one. So I'm kind of a pessimist naturally. You know, it takes conscious effort for me to be optimistic. And I think about worst case scenarios all the time. For example, I want to have a bumper sticker on my vehicle that says, the worst part about the zombie apocalypse is going to be pretending that I'm not excited. And that's really how I think. Always thinking about worst case scenarios. So I'm never very surprised when these kinds of things happen. Now, catastrophizing, like Martin was saying, it's wasting energy, right? I'm not going anywhere. I'm not doing anything, and it's not productive. That's that key word we're looking for. So when we're contingency planning, we're thinking about bad things that could happen. We're going through a tough time right now, and people are hoarding food, and people are, you know, some folks are getting laid off, and some bad things are happening. So being prepared for these kind of contingencies is a productive, responsible thing to do. When you're sitting there spinning out in the snowbank and you're worrying about something you don't have control over and you're not taking purposeful action, that's catastrophizing, and that is not productive. That's counterproductive.
I like it. Oh, go back one. And these are kind of different ways to identify them. Of catastrophizing, of thinking in that way. The situation is ambiguous, so it doesn't necessarily. Oh man, I lost my train of thought there.
Doesn't
I'll spot.
So an ambiguous situation doesn't necessarily mean that you can identify a specific issue. You just know something bad has happened and bad things could potentially continue to happen. Or something that you value is at stake in a very extreme manner. Kind of going back to my example earlier, if you like your vehicle to run properly and you discover you have a giant crack in your radiator, which means you can't go more than 10 miles before the thing overheats, and it could cause potentially more damage if you don't get it fixed soon, that's something that you might value that could cause you to catastrophize. Or you could just be dog-ass tired from your, pardon my language, from just life in general, and that has a way of making you think negative thoughts just because your brain doesn't have the energy to get out of negative thought patterns. When you're afraid of something, like you did something wrong, you know you did something wrong, your parents just called you by your full name because your report card just came in, and now you're wondering, oh man, what are they going to take away? How long am I going to be grounded for? You know, going back to when we could still get grounded by our parents and stuff, or maybe for some of you who still live at home, that's a reality for you. And then another one that obviously we've all had happen before, it's your first time doing something. I know for our newcomers, it was probably a little stressful coming to your first drill. That can be something to catastrophize about. Going in for a job interview, if you've never had to do that before. Heck, even if it's the 17th time you've had to do it before, you've never met that person before, it could be something to catastrophize about. But the important part is to get into our method of fighting that, which we'll get into in just a second here. Carlos.
All right. Thanks for the save on that one.
Good spot.
So the overall goal is to lower anxiety, which, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory when you look at it. Like, it gets you out of your head, and it keeps you from catastrophizing, and it gets you to look at your goals overall and develop a plan for dealing with those goals. So that's going to lower your anxiety. this is a big one that I like to drive home. The goal is not to pretend that all is well and deny real problems. So
Yep.
we're not trying to teach you to just push it off to the side and be like, everything's going to be fine. I'm just going to push through it. Like, we want to prepare you for whatever troubles you're going through. And I think Mike has something on this one.
Yeah, thank you for noticing that I'm holding back on the reins here. This is not called the Hakuna Matata skill, okay? This is called to put it in perspective. Things are not always going to be fine and perfect and okay. We're going to make it. We're going to put in some work, but we need to be productive. We need to have our effort count for something. We need to worry about the right things, and then we need to take action about the things we're worried about. But yeah, it's not just everything's going to be fine, hunky-dory. That's not real life. Real life is tough most of the time. But how do we live and survive in a difficult environment? That's the key.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to explain the steps now about how we do this. So the first thing is going to be describing the activating event. And this is going to be whatever you're going to have. You can write it down step by step. There's some forms that if you want any of these forms, you need help with any of this, you feel like you're catastrophizing right now with what's going on, you want to work through this, I know that the other two gentlemen in this conversation are more than willing to help you out, have a conversation with you. I'm working half days right now, so I am available from 12:30 till whenever. And even if you call me at night, I'm good to hook on this. But describe the activating event. And then capture worst case scenario, worst case thoughts. So I think we divvied this one out to the LT, so he's going to send this one.
Yeah, and I want to hit the first one also real quick. So you remember whenever we're talking about an activating event, it's just the 4 W's, right? We don't want to say why or because or mind read or any of that goofy stuff. We're just talking about what's going on, right? So we're experiencing a pandemic right now. What is happening? We are experiencing COVID-19 pandemic in the United States, and it's been going on since probably December, January, and all the way up to the present. That's it. No why, no because, just the facts, right? Just what is actually going on. And then step 2, when we're capturing the worst case thoughts, I like to describe this as, you know, these bugs or these bees or something flying around your head, and they're just distracting you, and you're swatting at them, but you're not really taking any purposeful action. You're going to capture each one of these. You're going to write them down. Okay, this thought is pinging around in my head like a ball in a pinball machine. I'm going to write it down. What's the worst thing that could happen? Well, I think, you know, people that I love are going to die. Okay, let's write that down. What's going to happen? We're going to enter into a financial apocalypse. Okay, write that down. And you just write them all down till there's no more bugs. There's no more balls in the pinball machine. You captured them all. You've put them down on paper. You have to capture them all before you can move on to the next step. If you don't, they're going to keep distracting you. They keep buzzing around your head, and you're not going to be able to finish the rest of the skill.
Yep. And then step 3, which is me, I'm pretty good at capturing the best case thoughts. Or so with the example that he used, and again, we didn't practice any of these, so this is kind of off the cuff. You know, I am going to, my best case thoughts of what's going on with this pandemic is, you know, a distant cousin of mine is going to create a cure and he's going to leave all of his money to me. What else do we have? You know, I'm going to get COVID-19 and it turns out that I'm the one person that's immune to it and I'm going to heal the world. You know, like, and you just keep going with these things. And they're meant to be goofy because it's supposed to snap you out of this dark area that you're in. So they're meant to be goofy. They're meant to be funny, and they're meant to be just so far extreme. So you can kind of take a breath. You know, you're caught up in this and then you start having these goofy thoughts and you're just like, oh, okay. You know, like that's really not going to happen. So it's not necessarily something that's realistic that's going to happen. This is more just the far, far right. And then it snaps you out of that. And then after you're snapped out of that and you're kind of in a mentally better place, you get to move on to step 4, which is going to be Winnie.
Step 4, basically where I sit every day of the week, is developing your most likely outcomes. So this is obviously, like Sergeant Monroy was saying, after getting all the goofy, super happy, I'm gonna win $1 million and, you know, the work, and we'll find world peace and solve world hunger and create cold fusion and all that other fun junk. We come to the reality of the situation. So in the case of this particular situation with our pandemic that we're dealing with right now, realistically speaking, eventually they'll find a good and fast-acting vaccine for this particular strain of COVID-19. Eventually, everything will return to normal. We as a species have made it through far worse pandemics and far worse situations in the past. So we will more than likely bounce out of this again. And then that kind of also frees you up to go right into step 5, which is making a plan to deal with those most likely outcomes. So again, in the grand scheme of what's happening with the pandemic, best plan of action right now in order to achieve these goals, or at least help to achieve these goals, since obviously we're not all scientists working at the CDC, day and night and everything. Stay in your house, which I know for a lot of us can suck. We're not all introverts who just play video games all day long and then occasionally look at the sun through the window and decide that it's putting too much glare on the TV and close the shades.
Hey,
just
okay, I like being an introvert.
yeah. Let's see.
So I'll spot you a little bit on the step 5 here.
Yeah.
So it's just like you said, what's reality? Reality is we are going to make it through this. Yes, it will take a toll. It will be expensive. We're all going to have to make some sacrifices and some changes, but let's make this plan, right? So let's plan on having a life. Let's plan on getting outside and spending time with our family while we have this kind of forced family time. That can be a positive thing for a lot of us. Let's go walk the dog. Let's go and enjoy life in this mandatory work from home or, minimize your busy life kind of schedule that we're on. And let's make the most out of it. Something I want to say about this whole process, by the way, and just about everything in resilience, is that as soon as you have knowledge, as soon as you understand what is going on with yourself, you then have the power to choose how you're going to live, right? And this is something that's really been sticking with me lately. I can choose whether or not I catastrophize. I have knowledge of this skill. I've heard this skill before. I've done the practical exercise. I've seen how generating best case thoughts has the undoing effect and jolts me out of that negative counterproductive thinking that I'm in. But whether or not I use the skill is up to me. I get to choose. I get to choose whether or not to be pessimistic or optimistic. And I think that's a question we all have to ask ourselves is, how do we want to be? Do we want to be resilient? Do we want to take purposeful action? Do we want to have good, healthy contingency planning? Or is it easier to just spin out instead of getting out of the car and digging ourselves out of the snowbank and getting back on the road?
I think that is probably a really good place to end it right there. That was really good. I like that. I'm going to stop sharing and we will stop recording. Thanks everybody for viewing us or coming and watching the second video. We really do enjoy this. Like the first time is a little nerve-wracking. It's getting a little better as we go on. So hope to do another one. Put your comments below, whatever that may be. If you want to see another video, if you want to see something besides MRT 631st, let me know and we'll get someone else jumping on here and doing something else. Thanks.